everyone, and welcome to this panel session for Self-PubCon. We're hosted by KDP, so I'm Jen and I'm from Kindle Direct Publishing. And today we're going to be talking to two of our fantastic KDP authors on the topic Profitable Publishing on KDP, Expert Tactics for Maximising Your Income. So in this discussion, two of our KDP authors will talk about the most effective strategies and tactics that they've used to maximise profitability in self-publishing. So our two panellists today are Sacha Black and J.M. Dalgleish. J.M. Dalgleish is a best-selling crime novelist. He was published his first book in 2018 and is now a best-selling author across multiple countries and has sold in excess of 2 million books. He was also shortlisted for the Kindle Storyteller Award in 2020, and his books have been translated and are available across the world. So welcome, Jason. And Sacha. Sacha Black is a best-selling author in her own right as well. She writes a spicy sapphic fantasy romance. Is that the best way to put it, Sacha?
Yeah, that works.
And also writes books on the writing craft for authors as well. So thank you for joining us, both of you, and appreciate you taking the time today. As I mentioned, we've got some great questions to run through today about how you maximize your sales and profit on KDP. But first of all, maybe let's kind of go back to the start. So how did you first kind of break through into writing and into self-publishing? What was kind of, after you pressed that button and kind of put your book out there, what was the kind of first thing that you did to try to get your books noticed? And what do you think made the most impact in that early phase? Sacha, maybe did you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. So I'm kind of two people. Actually, I'm more than two people. I'm three people because neither of these are my real names. But so I started life as Sacha, and Sacha teaches other writers, basically. What I did was everything that I learned, I just happened to write down. It was back in the era of blogs and I was a bit senile. So I just wrote everything that I learned down and people really liked it. And apparently I was funny because I do a lot of very rude jokes whilst I'm teaching. And so I put those into books and they sold okay. And those sort of enabled me to leave my day job, but they weren't ever really making, sort of good money. I wasn't ever going to pay off my mortgage doing that. So the thing that really worked for me was when I decided to write the thing that I'd kind of been afraid of writing. So I'm a queer woman and I hadn't really seen any queer books in fantasy that were really representing what I wanted. So as an adult, I wanted to read spice. I'm a romance girly. I've always read romance and I was kind of sick and tired of reading straight romance. So I was like, well, maybe I can do that. And I did. And lo and behold, it changed our lives. So basically the thing that I did was I kind of reviewed the market, looked at what was selling in fantasy romance, looked at what is selling in romance under kind of the straight genres. And then I applied as much of that as I possibly could in terms of tropes, like popularity genres, branding, everything like that, except I made it queer. And then I put my own, well, not my experiences, but, that kind of lived experience of being a queer woman in the world. And there's kind of like language and things that I just use that are naturally part of the queer community. And so those are the things that really resonated. And so they landed really well. And then I did that and then I did it again and I did it again. And it was the kind of the doing it again and again, which has kind of got me to the point that I'm at today. So yeah, that's sort of my whistle-stop journey.
So kind of consistency was quite important to you, do you think, in that?
Consistency, yeah, in terms of delivering, understanding what the reader wanted. So instead of starting with me, I started with what is already working for readers and like, where are those gaps in the market? So the gap in the market was there is lots of young adult, like lesbian fantasy, but not really anything for adults. And then where there was adult sort of sapphic fantasy, it was very sweet and romance, and actually we're in the kind of era of dark romance at the moment. And I was like, well, I can do that. So it was finding what was in the market and then finding where there was a gap as well. And then where I thought my skill set was best laid, because I really enjoy writing spice. And so I knew that was going to be a really good fit for me because I love writing spice. I love writing romance more than anything in the whole world. And so it was going to be a good fit. And I think that's probably the best thing that anybody can do for themselves, is to look at the market, assess what is wanted, what is already out there, and then where their skill sets lie and what they think they can deliver, with just a slight tweak on it, right? That my slight tweak was making it kind of, spicy but for lesbians.
And what about you, Jason? How did you approach your kind of early stages of your writing journey?
Well, first off, I'll say what Sasha just said there was brilliant. I wish I'd listened to you. I was spoken to you like 15 years ago. That would have been amazing. I sort of fell into writing crime. I had no experience in writing anything. I read a lot of books as a child, and I always wanted to be a writer when I was in my teens, but I never thought I could make a living from it. And so I just put it on the back burner, went to work and forgot about it. And then I had probably what I would describe as an early midlife crisis when I was approaching 40. And I thought, is this what my life's about? This is a nightmare. And I thought, no, I really want to have a go at writing a book. So cut long story short, that's what I did. And I was reading crime at the time, really enjoying it. And I thought, hey, I could do this. I mean, I could do it. And I decided to try that. And indie wasn't, it was a thing, but I didn't know anything about it. And I wrote my first book, and I tried to get an agent, and I tried to find a publisher, and I got some nice words, but no one picked it up. And it was a friend of mine who suggested, why don't you just self-publish it? And I thought, I've no idea what you're talking about. So I started looking at it, and while I was doing that, I found that there was a whole ecosphere of indie publishing and marketing and things you could do to learn. And it was a completely eye-opening experience for me. And I thought, well, if I'm going to do this, I need to do it properly. So I took a step back and didn't worry about publishing that first book. And I carried on. I wrote a second book, and indeed actually a third book. And in the meantime, in the background, I was learning how to do marketing, how to build a website, how to do all these sort of things that everyone was saying, you kind of need to do all this. And I didn't know any of it. So I had to learn everything, all the technical side of things. And in terms of craft, I had no idea. I had no training. I'd not done any creative writing courses or anything like that. I would certainly suggest people look at the craft before worrying about everything else. But I had 3 books. So when I published my first book in May 2018, I had actually 3 books. So I had a limited marketing budget. I didn't have that much money. And what money I did have went into the cover design and the formatting and a little bit of editing. I'd love to have paid for more editing, but as everyone knows, it isn't cheap. So you have to choose where you put your money. So I put it into the book, into the covers and the presentation, and a very small marketing budget. But having 3 books ready to go 1 month after another, it sort of leveled the playing field a little bit with not having a huge marketing spend. I think maybe the landscape slightly changed. I'm sure we'll get onto that. Back when I did it in 2018, it was, authors talk about the gold rush days of KU and indie publishing, and people who got in first had massive success, and now it's a much more competitive field, and there are a lot more authors. So you probably need, I would say, you need a little bit more than what I started with in 2018 when I published. But that's what I did. And the first book sold quite well, much better than I anticipated. And then the second book sold more, and the first book carried on selling. And by the time the third book came out, I thought, hey, I could do this. This is good. And little did I know, I was still at the bottom of the mountain, and it was a really steep climb. And I thought I'd covered everything, and there was so much to learn. So it's an ongoing process. But for me, that's how I did it. I think I had 3 books ready to go. So if I had 1 book, I think people would read it and then put it down, and I'd disappear, and then you got to find those people again. But having several books right from the start, people could buy into your characters and into your style, and maybe you a little bit, and that's what worked for me. And then obviously I built on that. Every book that came out, and the money I made, I reinvested into more marketing and doing different things, and I just kept going, and it sort of just kept going up that hill and writing more books, and each one has outperformed the one before. And I'm dreading the day when I put a book out and it doesn't do better than the one before. I'm sure it will happen sooner or later, but at the moment it's great. So
it's like you said, it is an ongoing process, and I think that's something that's quite an important message, is it kind of how you evolve and reevaluate your strategies and things like that as you're kind of going down the line. And so how do you guys approach that? So in terms of, is it that you use kind of data and analytics? So, for example, on Kindle Direct Publishing, you can access your sales reports, your pages read from Kindle Unlimited. How do you kind of make the decisions of where to focus your kind of marketing, as you are kind of evolving through your journey?
Yeah. What I would do, because I write in series, and I think writing in series really works well for indies and certainly works well on KDP. If you write standalone, I think you can still do it as an indie, but from my experience, I think the best return on your marketing and your spend looking at your data is to write in series. Now that can be crime, it can be romance, it can be science fiction, fantasy. They lend themselves very much to an indie model because the more books you have that are tied to the same product. So if you had 10 books, for example, all in the same series, you can target your marketing primarily to book one. Because even if your book came out a year ago or 2 years ago, if someone hasn't read it, it's still new to them. So you're getting people into book one, and then the idea is that then they'll read through your series, and that spreads the cost of your marketing. So you might not make much money on book one, or if any money on book one, if you're honest. But if you've got 2, 3, 4, 5 books, hopefully 10, 15 books, the more the merrier. If you can do that and they're good quality and you keep readers coming through, you'll lose some along the way. But I think if you can push everyone to book one and maybe to your latest book, so that gets up the rankings as well and gets sales and generates interest. I usually find if I put a new book out and I market it, I normally see a boost on the first books in the series as well, because people will see it and they'll go maybe back to book one and then begin from there. Now, some people will come in partway through a series, but primarily I will focus my marketing on the first book in I've got 3 series on the go at the moment. I'll put the marketing to book one primarily in the background for that reason. And you've got it feeding the funnel, pushing people to book one, and then they read through. So even though you don't necessarily turn a profit on book one, if you looked at the data, and I do download the data, we do look at that and study sales performance, KU reads and cost per clicks and that type of thing. But primarily what I'd say is work out how much your catalog is worth to you, and then you know how much you can afford to spend. Don't look just at your budget for book one. Don't look at what you're bidding on Amazon ads, for example, or your cost per click, and just primarily look at that, because believe me, I would turn off all my advertising, pretty much all my advertising, if I did just looked at the sales for that book that it was targeting. You need to know what your whole catalog, what that series is worth to you. So if it costs you £1, for example, to get that first book sold, probably 80% of people are going to read through to book 10, and that will make you £10. I'm making it ballpark figures. So you can then spend £1. You could even spend £2 on selling a £1 book if you know it's going to make you £10 over the course of the next year, 18 months. So you need to know how much your books are worth, how people read through, and then you can look at the data as to how much you're willing to spend on acquiring those ads. And if you're running advertising that doesn't then fit that, if it's costing you more than, say, if you work out that £1 is what you're willing to spend to acquire that first sale, if you're spending £1.50 on that ad, it's not worth it, so turn it off. And there are plenty of other ads that will return that profit across the long term.
Really good advice. What about you?
So what's the question? How do I determine what marketing to do?
Yeah, so is it that you're using data and analytics, or kind of, because you mentioned kind of looking at the market, but how do you make the decision of where to focus your time?
So I run a very different system of marketing. I do some of the same things. So I do focus the majority of my marketing on the book one, but I don't do any of this first in series, free or 99 cents nonsense, because I want to earn money from every single book. So I'm a little bit like, not going to put my stuff for free. Not that I don't think it works. I do think it works. I especially think it works if you are predominantly in KU. I only have one series in KU, which I wrote for Kindle Unlimited specifically. I kind of shaped it, the length, the everything, to kind of fit what I thought worked there. Everything else is wide, and my biggest driver is to bring readers directly to my Shopify store. So my Shopify store is my second biggest earner, and it is turning a really good profit at this point. So in terms of like marketing and how I decide, a lot of my marketing is still sweat equity at the moment. So I do a lot of TikTok. However, the conversion rates on TikTok are insane. So if you can get something to blow, the money that you can make is eye-watering. So I am mid six figures, I suppose, like approaching mid six figures, and I probably spend about $6,000 a year on advertising. That's it. So no, I'm not a seven-figure author. And yes, I probably do need to do advertising and get that working to reach seven figures, but I've done a lot without really spending an awful lot of money. So in terms of my marketing, I follow a lot of trends. So I am on TikTok. I do look at what is trending, and then I look at how I can spin that to meet my audience and my readers. The other thing that I do is I try and diversify where I'm reaching readers. So for example, I try and, promote the fact that you can get my books in libraries. So there's a free entry that way, even though I'm being paid for it. I will, I've got a series in Kindle Unlimited, so people can use Kindle Unlimited, which is like a low cost point. And then I also do Kickstarter. So my latest Kickstarter did 56 grand, and like the average pledge price is £136, with the highest price, I think somebody spent 600 quid on there. So I sort of try and have these price bands where people have got all these different entry points that they can come in at and pay what they can afford essentially and get pieces of my work. So in terms of like the how I decide, it's usually always directed at either the upcoming release, the latest release, or the first in series. Don't tend to promote like a book 2, because naturally the cliffhangers that you insert should lead to them sort of going on to the next thing. The other thing that I try and do is push people to my either Kindle Unlimited or Shopify. And that's kind of like the two places that I push, because I know if they don't come to my Shopify, they're probably a KU reader. So those are kind of the two places that I will push people. So yeah, in terms of the decisions, it really, once I have made the decision about what I'm going to write and deliver into the market, then it just becomes about, okay, how do we promote this first book? What's the language that readers are using? Like, are there certain keywords or phrases? What are the tropes that they're talking about? How can I use those tropes and talk about those tropes when I'm promoting my books as well? And I promote in different ways. So like TikTok is very much TikTok is essentially the blue water of Facebook advertising, because it pushes your content to brand new people. I might have 27,000 followers on there. Very few of them actually get my content. So it's essentially constantly new audience. But you then have to funnel that audience somewhere. So I'm trying to funnel them like into my mailing list, onto even my Instagram, because Instagram is more of a community base for me and my readers, because it does start by sending your content out to your actual followers. So I'm sort of trying to use these different pieces for their best purposes. Like, what is this social media good at? What is AMS ad good at? I will let the systems do what the systems do, and do some category ads or auto ads. I try and use whatever the system is good at for the best thing. And that's, funnily enough, how I hire people as well. Like, I will only hire people to do the thing that they are brilliant at, and then let them do that. And so, yeah, I suppose all my decisions kind of based on that.
Really interesting. And I think kind of both of you have mentioned Amazon ads, so it would probably make sense for us to have a quick chat about your approach to that. There's kind of two angles, I suppose. The first one is, how do you even get started in terms of Amazon ads? And so looking at things like selecting, keywords and things like that. But also then, how do you make sure that they're kind of meeting the ROI that you are looking for? So your return on investment. So how are you making sure that they're profitable? Which is a big question. So we'll kind of keep it fairly short. But do you have any tips that are kind of top of mind for you in terms of getting started in Amazon ads or optimizing your ads? Are there any kind of key takeaways that you would give, without going into too much detail, because it's a big topic?
I'll start, because I'm probably the lesser, or I use them less, and I'm probably less good at them. So what I will say is that start with a budget that you don't mind losing. You have to be willing to lose that money. So if that's £50, fine, but you have to be okay with that. If it's £500, great, you've got more flexibility, but you have to be okay with knowing that you might not get that money back. So that's the first thing that I would say. The second thing that I would say is the systems are very good at knowing what they need to do. So just start with a very low level automatic ad, which it does itself. And then in terms of just your mindset with how you approach it, I very much look at, okay, how much did I spend today on advertising and how much came into my KDP account? If what has come in is larger than what I have spent, I'm okay. There's lots of cool data and cool numbers and cool statistics that can terrify you. And actually, it doesn't really matter. Are you earning more than you're spending? Great, you're in profit. Let's go. That's kind of like my big tips. But that's quite scary because, you hear this 70% ACOS figure, and I just think it's all a bit of nonsense. Like at the end of the day, you're getting visibility on all of these books on the platform that converts the best. Who cares if it's slightly above that? If you've got more than one book in your series, you're very likely going to continue to get readers coming back if you've delivered your craft and all of the caveats, and you've got a cliffhanger and all the rest of it.
Yeah, I think Sasha's absolutely right on that. I mean, my head used to spin when I looked at all the available data you can do when you look at ACOSs and which ones do you look at, what data you look at. And I'm not a big data guy. I'm not a big spreadsheet guy. And I think you can really, and I think if you are, it's beneficial when you've got all that data because you can download, and I would recommend everyone downloads it and finds, and there's ways you can find to sort it. It's not that complicated. But Sasha's right. I don't look at ACOS figures and, because it just makes your head spin, and you could be going in and changing things every couple of weeks. You don't need to do that. Once you've got it set up, it's exactly what Sasha said there. I look at how much I've got coming in, how much I'm spending. Am I comfortable with those two figures? And if the one that's coming in is higher, now it won't be directly related to necessarily the ads. It's your overall revenue that's coming in. Now I can do that because primarily I focus on Amazon ads. I don't know TikTok. I find Amazon ads quite simple, and Facebook ads I can find quite simple. And they're the two primary marketplaces I use. And Facebook is really only I use for launches or if I run a big promotion. Mm-hmm. Background ads on Amazon. People are on Amazon to buy. If they're looking at books, they're looking to buy books. If they're looking to buy crime books, advertise to crime books, target other crime authors, your peer group. And you can use auto ads. I use sponsored product ads. That's it. Mm-hmm. There might be auto ads. They might be category focused on detective fiction or crime fiction and other similar authors. And if you just do that, you're going to be hitting the right people. Your books are going to be being shown to the right people. Probably a little tip I would say is if you're just starting out or just know what level you're at. For example, if I was starting today, I wouldn't be targeting J.K. Rowling's crime books. I wouldn't be targeting Richard Osman. I wouldn't be targeting, the big indies, the big hitters, J.D. Kirk, LJ Ross. I mean, yes, you're like, well, they got loads of audiences and my book goes, but they're going to be really expensive. So if you target the layer sort of above you or where you're at, and then you can move it up, and then you can target those next ones up, because otherwise the cost becomes just really expensive. But so because I focus on Amazon, I look at it as my background ads that are running every day, and I keep my visibility up. A good tip that many people genuinely don't do is they don't target themselves. So you can set up ads on your name, your keywords, your books, your book titles, and that means, well, it just, people don't do it. They think they have to target other authors, but you create ads just selling your own books.
Yeah.
Strangely. But it does actually work. They are the most profitable ones I find on Amazon. Now, obviously, the bigger presence you have, the bigger audience you have, the more the algorithm can help you with that. But that's something to focus on. But yeah, don't think, well, if I just put everything on a credit card, £10,000 worth of advertising is all going to be brilliant, because it doesn't work like that. I mean, there's an old adage in marketing, something like 20% of your marketing budget will actually generate results, but no one tells you which 20% that is. So you got to be willing to lose the 80%, and you will lose the 80% because it doesn't all work. And sometimes what works in one of my series doesn't work in another one. Some work, some don't. So you have to keep on it. But once you've got it set up, you've got those ads set up and on the platform and they're running and they're not spending a fortune, but they are spending, and you're seeing the revenue coming in. Don't go in and tweak them every week. Don't go in and start faffing around with, keep an eye on them. I'd say at least once a week, once you're comfortable, maybe download them. But I don't. I say I don't. We don't. There are more people working on it than just me now. But the temptation to go in and try and tweak it to make it better, or I had a bad day yesterday, I better go in and change my ads. It's like, no, leave it. The better off, the less you do, the more the algorithm will do it for you, the more the system will do it for you, and they're pretty geared up to sell. Amazon are very good at selling things. So if you've got a product on there, they will try and sell it for you because they make money from it. So, just let it run. And I go in, or we go in once every quarter, really, just really analyze things. Obviously, if spend is massively inflated, if you start targeting ASINs, for example, and somebody gets a really big book that goes #1 in the Kindle store for 3 weeks, and you're targeting it, it's going to cost you a fortune. So you need to be aware of that and go in and maybe switch that off or take a view on it or lower your budget. But on the whole, just get them set up and let them run, let them do their thing, and just keep an eye on it. But be careful how much you spend, because there are some people out there you can get advice from who will tell you to do X and Y and it will generate this, and it won't. There are a lot of people who make money from telling you how to do things and they don't know any better than you do. So just be careful what advice you follow. Look at who you're taking advice from, what they've done, what their track record is, and don't go mad. Just do it incrementally. I know we all want success immediately, but maybe just incrementally build it and focus on what you're doing rather than expecting it all tomorrow. Because, believe me, a year down the road, you can look back and go, that was a really successful year. You don't need to have it too stressful.
Yeah, I think that's great advice again. And I think as well, because you've touched on a few things there, and I think once you sort of mentioned about setting things up and then kind of carrying on after that is sort of the next phase of kind of where you move to next, I think is something that might be interesting to touch on. So kind of how, once you've kind of got everything set up and you have tested a few options, kind of learned what's working for you and for your books, what do you do next? So how do you have any tips for how to kind of scale what you're doing, or kind of widen the net, I suppose? Are there anything that you guys tested in the early phases to kind of look at new revenue streams? Obviously, I know, Sasha, you've mentioned the social media, but were there any other areas that you looked at to kind of start bringing in the profitability kind of consistently, I suppose?
So I have multiple different revenue streams, and not everybody wants that, because each revenue stream is almost like a mini business in itself, and so they will require time, effort, and energy. So I mentioned, I have my own web store, which next week we're having like a business day, and we're looking at how we can really, really grow that next year. But obviously doing that requires more than just my time. Like, ultimately, at the end of the day, I'm the only person that can write the book. Anybody can package up books, anybody can sell books, anybody can work with a warehouse distributor to distribute things for us, but I'm the only one that can work the books. So as weird as it sounds, in order to increase profitability, the best thing you can do is protect your own time and actually outsource as much as possible. And that sort of does come a little bit later down the line. But also, I think that we are too gun shy with it. And I think we often have to do it before we're ready. Every person I have freelance contracted with has increased my revenue, even if tangentially. So, I mean, the big things for me are my Shopify, which is my own website where I sell books, and next year we'll be selling other bits and bobs. The other thing that I do is Kickstarter, and because the price per customer is so significantly higher, we are able to do some really cool stuff on there. Things that you just don't get. What we sell there is the experience, right? It isn't just a book. We're selling, the box with the things that are in. I can't really talk about it because obviously I write spicy, but there are things in the box that are in the book, and so it's like an experience. Let me put it subtly, okay? Everybody, never invite me again. No. So yeah, we are doing more. We're like engaging with the audience and getting to produce more there. So for me, it's about, what can I do to leverage my intellectual property? Can I sell rights? So, my audio goes to Podium. Can I do translations? That's something we're looking at for next year as well. So it's like, how do I make more from this one piece of IP? Well, I can do a special edition that I sign and I sell for a higher price on my website. I can do the KU version for the ebook. I can do a Kickstarter version. I can do, I can bundle, I can have an audio version, a German version, a French version, or whatever. So there are lots of different ways that you can iterate that content. But each of those, it requires an investment. And so it's like you need to do them incrementally. But the biggest thing that I can say to you is to stop doing all the busy work. And I'm like the biggest hypocrite because it took me so long to learn this lesson. And it's been the hardest lesson because I'm a little bit of a control freak. But it is the most liberating thing you can do, actually, to give up pieces of that work. And so I'm sort of saying to you, do it early, but I'm also saying do it slowly, because it's really important to find the right people. Because once I found the right person, oh my goodness me, they earn their own money. They earn their own salary. And so, yeah, do it before you're ready, but also take your time in appointing is probably the biggest thing I can say.
It's really interesting because we not polar opposites, but we just do it a different way, because what you're saying there totally makes sense to me, but I know that won't work for me.
Yeah, well, this is why
I know, I have the thought because I've gone down, I mean, obviously my books are ebooks, they're paperbacks, but they're still print on demand, which is fine. And it's the easiest way to go about getting paperbacks. Your stories into paperback is print on demand, but the knock-on effect of that is it will cost you more to print them. Whereas if you were able to do print runs and get them into distribution chains, and I've looked at, you could bring the cost of that down massively. I mean, you really can. I've held discussions with Clays. Go on, Sash, you want to jump in?
Well, I just wanted to know, so what's your ratio of ebook to paperback sales?
Yeah, see, this is the knock on we're talking about, because the cost of the print on demand paperbacks is still worth my while. It's worth doing, but probably print is only for me about 5% of my total revenue.
So
it's a massive growth opportunity for me.
Yeah,
to do that, and I've had discussions with Clays, and I've had discussions with others on what we could do with print runs and cost, and I can get a very good quality product at a much cheaper price than what you pay on print on demand. But the print on demand thing, you don't have to have, you don't have to spend the time on the administration of dealing with warehousing and distribution chains, and I've been down, I've looked at it, and sales reps and pay, and every time I've looked at it, I've got so far down the road and I thought, you know what? I just don't need that. And I could hire somebody, but then I'm hiring somebody and then I'm paying them, and it's fine. And I do have freelancers. I don't do everything myself. Believe me, I couldn't possibly. And I do have people I trust, and there's people I get to do things. But some of those revenue streams that I think will be massively growth places for me, and I've seen other authors do it really well, I'm just not prepared to put my time into that. So I put my time into what I want to focus on that is more profitable for me. So for me, I do audio, I do translations, all of them add in to what make profit, and they all add into my business model, and that's terrific. Do they do it on the same level as my digital publishing? Not even close. It's worth doing. It can be expensive. Certainly the translations, which I've been doing, they take a bit of time, but other people do. I pay linguists to do it, and it's great, and they produce a great product, and they are proven profitable, and it adds to my bottom line, which is fantastic. But for me, the biggest increase of my bottom line is to write another book. So that's what I do. I try and be very consistent with how many books I put out. I aim for minimum 3 books a year, but it's usually 4, and last year was 5, and they were all really and that just really boosts my bottom line. So every year, that's why it's growing and increasing. So I think the other revenue streams are brilliant. And if you're someone, I'm not saying this to you, Sasha, but if you're someone who has these, entrepreneurial flair to try these different things and really push it and you've got that energy, that's fantastic, because you could do really, really well. There's never been a better time, I think, to do that with the platforms that are available and the internet and the other companies that are there. I think it's brilliant. I just know it won't work for me, just because I would just lose it very, very quickly because I don't know what I'm doing. So maybe Sasha's right. Find someone that you trust to do what they're good at and then get them to do it, which is what I've done. I've done that with marketing. I've done that with finance. I've done that with designers. And once you find someone and it works well with you, and you build that relationship, fantastic. And again, that does help with your bottom line, because it frees up my time to write more books, which is what makes me more money than anything else. So, there are other things I'm looking at, revenue streams. I mean, the one people I talk to, we all sort of crave is to have a TV series or film or something like that. And I'm liaising with production companies, and I've got to deal with some, and we work on things with big actors and script writers, and I'm writing screenplays, and that's fantastic. And if it all comes off, I'm sure that will add to the bottom line as well. But for me, the core thing that I always focus on is, what do I do? I'm an author. I mean, some people will hire ghostwriters to go and write for books on their name, and that's fine. You can go down the James Patterson model if you want to. But again, for me, I wouldn't be a writer then. I'd become an editor and a publisher. And believe me, editing is the thing I hate the most. What I do for a living, it drives me mad. But I do it because I have to, and you have a professional product at the end of it. But I don't want to do that. I want to be a writer. So I still primarily want to give my time to writing. But all those other revenue streams, it all adds up, and it might just be a little bit here, a little bit there. If you can do it, and you can allocate that time and do it well, or get somebody else to do it with you, definitely worthwhile doing. When I did my translations, just an example, slight aside, but when I started translating at the time, I was umming and ahhing, should I do it, because of the cost and the investment, and if it doesn't work. And I think it was 5 or 6 translations in before I thought, actually, this is going to work. So it was a gamble. And it was an expensive gamble, but now I wouldn't change it. And now it's all part of the same process. So I finish a book, it goes to my linguists, and they start working on it. And then I have a marketing strategy for Germany, which is different to the UK. And so well worth doing, but don't try and run before you can walk. Just do it bit by bit. Take on what you can do. Don't spread yourself too thin.
I just want to add to that. So paperback, hardback, sort of together is like, on a bad month, 30% of my income, which is why having a paperback strategy is so key for me. But I completely agree with you. My minimum is 3 books a year as well. And so because of that, I now have somebody I literally call my operations manager, because I cannot be dealing with the logistics because I'm just not a logistics oriented. Okay, how does the magic work logistics person? I am not a how do we get books from here to here person. So yeah, completely agree with everything that you said.
And I think it's actually a really good kind of place to kind of go back to the beginning, because we are kind of coming up towards the end of our session now. So for the authors that are watching now, who are really at that early stage, who might not have the big budgets, who kind of aren't at a point where they can hire people or, do all of those things, or kind of really sort of throw lots of money into testing wider advertising or marketing strategies, what do you think, in your experience, would be the top areas that they should invest in to see the best return on their investments, and the best profitability in that really early stage? Maybe 1 to 3 points, if you have any that you can share, that they should take away from today.
So the first thing is craft. Always, if you can't write a good book, you haven't got anything. And I think you need to marry your craft to what you think is the most sellable product possible, in whatever guise that looks like. We can all argue about writing to market or not, but if your goal is to earn money, then you are not the priority, your reader is the priority. So understanding the craft of the market, what actually sells, what do they actually want? So that's the biggest thing, and that's free. You can do that. Well, I mean, maybe if you have a library card, it's free. Clearly, if by the My Bookcase, it's not free. But, read a lot and study Amazon categories, the top 100, study what is going on, break it down into as small pieces as you can. So that's the first one. The second one is infrastructure. If you are treating this like a business, you need the infrastructure of a business. And so that means understanding, once somebody comes to you, where do they end up? How do you capture them? How do you keep them? How do you make sure they're going to come back to you? So that includes things like having a air quotes reader magnet, something that encourages them to sign up to your mailing list, something that, some kind of sequence where you give them something, let them get to know you, introduce them to more of your books so that they follow on and, continue to go through your backlist. And then the third one, I think, is probably understanding that it's not going to happen overnight. And I know that's not really like something tangible, but also it is, because I think what people lack is the willingness to come with an experimental attitude. So don't be afraid to make mistakes and to go wrong. Like, experiment with advertising, experiment with social media, look at the trends, what's working, try it. If it doesn't work for you, try something else. Like, don't get beaten down. I think we need more emotional resilience in the community. Coming with an experimental attitude, really scientifically experimental as well. Like, look at the data. How many views did you get on that post? How many clicks did you get on that advert? Don't be afraid of numbers. It's just information. You know, authors obviously love words and that's okay, but actually we do need to be okay with the numbers. So yeah, don't be afraid to approach things scientifically. Ask your kid, you know, they're studying science, they're doing experiments. How do you approach it, kiddo? You know, that kind of stuff. I'm kind of joking, but also not, right? We need to be able to come at this and understand that it takes time to go through these experiments and look at what's worked, and ultimately we can't predict the series that will blow, but persistence, I do believe, is at the heart of most success, really.
Yeah, I'd say definitely the first thing is start with the book. Start with what you're writing. Make sure, from my point of view, I say make sure it's something you want to write. Sasha's absolutely right. If let's assume that everybody watching this who's an author also wants to run it as a business or wants to make money, make a living from it. You know, it's a completely different approach. Maybe if you just want to write a book because you love writing, you're not worried about making money, and you know, you can just write whatever you love. But if you're going to invest this much time and energy in a business, make sure, one, it's something you want to do, and two, make sure you enjoy it. So you enjoy writing what you're writing. So, and then make sure that what you do produce is something other people want to read. Because you can have all the marketing strategies in the world, you can have a massive marketing budget if you want, and you'll be able to sell that first book. You will, even if it's not very good, you'll be able to sell a lot of them. But no money in the world, if that book isn't up to scratch, if you haven't presented it well, if you haven't written it well, if you didn't care about it, no one else is going to either. And no money in the world is going to make them buy another book from you ever again. So you have to make sure you have to start with the product that you're selling to start with. I really do believe that, you know, for me, it was a great start. I had several books under my belt, written, ready to go. Partly because, you know, every time you write a book, hopefully you get better with more experience and more practice, like any other sort of art form you do. The more you do it, the better you become. So for me, have more than one product. Don't expect to publish one book and be a millionaire overnight and go to the Amazon #1 store. You know, it takes time. I mean, I say my first book, when it came out, I said it sold well, and it did. It sold, I think, 1,000 copies in the first month, which for me, I thought, this is fantastic. This is amazing. I thought I was going to sell 3,500 books a year if I was lucky. So to sell 1,000 a month was fantastic. But believe me, that didn't get me into the top of the Kindle store. Not even close. It's not going to happen. So you're building on it. So you have to play that sort of long game. If you're building a business, it doesn't happen overnight. You might be someone will. It happens from time to time. Someone just hits something, they do a TikTok, and it's just brilliant. It goes crazy. Or, you know, you see it with musicians sometimes. They sell out arena tours before the first album even comes out. Well done to them. Most people aren't that lucky. You know, it's hard graft, it's effort, it's time, and it's perseverance. Because you're going to get knocks along the way. Anytime you put a book out, there are going to be people that won't like it. And there will be lots of people who are very vocal about why they don't like it. Yeah. And you can read that and you can start thinking, you know, I'm a terrible author. I don't deserve to be writing, and it knocks your confidence. I wouldn't say ignore feedback, don't ignore criticism, but also just accept that it's just somebody's opinion, and everybody's opinion, whether it's a 1-star or a 5-star, it's just their opinion, and hopefully everyone else's opinion is closer to the 5 than the 1. But just persevere with your own work, and if you're pragmatic, if you're responsible, and you persevere with it, there's no reason why you can't make a successful business. But you don't try and do everything all at once. Build on it, see what works, try things. If it doesn't work, don't worry about it, you know, and don't run before you can walk. I know it's an old cliche, it's horrible, but my writing series, I'm allowed to use cliches. So, you know, take time. Don't try and have overnight success. You know, I think something, I've said this before, people massively sort of overestimate what they can achieve in a very short period of time, but then they massively underestimate what they can achieve over a longer period of time. And if you just play that longer game, you know what? In 5 years' time, you'll look back and go, I'm glad I did it. And over that 5 years, there's no reason why you can't have success. But don't expect it all to happen in 6 months.
Thank you both. I think there's so many things that people can take away from the session today. I have to say, I'm not an author, obviously. And whenever I hear you guys talk about the process of writing the books, but then also being, the business of being an author, I think it can be really inspirational. So thank you for sharing your advice. So obviously, if you joined our session today, I'm sure you're aware of Kindle Direct Publishing. Maybe you're at a point where you are looking to publish your book, or you've already published, or you're kind of thinking about how you take it to the next phase. If you haven't published on KDP before, you're thinking about it, you can have a look at kdp.amazon.com, which will give you much more information about the publishing process. You retain full control, you retain all of the rights to your books throughout, and you can earn up to 70% royalties on your sales. There's lots of training material and help content to guide you through the process of getting the book ready to press that big button and publish it. So if there is anything you're not sure about, make sure you check out the help pages. For those of you that are kind of moving through the process of your writing journey and kind of looking at how you can grow, lots of the things that both Sasha and Jason talked about today, you can find more information on the help pages as well. Things such as the advertising programs. There's also more information about Author Central, building your author page, A+ content, which is some additional content you can put onto your product detail page for every book, and how you can find more of your readers. So thank you for joining us today, and I hope that you've taken something really useful away. And thank you again to our panelists. Thank you both.
Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Bye.